So welcome to everyone to the October 2024 update, and thank you for joining us all today. Most of you know me, but for those who don't, my name is Peter Mellor and I'm the Manager of Partnerships and Growth for SuperMate. As usual, we'll be joined by our Product Design Manager, Reese Hopper. For this webinar, we also get to welcome back our General Manager of Quality and Technical Services, Craig Stone, from his travels throughout Europe. So Craig will give us an update on the compliance changes that have occurred since the August webinar, and Reese will provide a demonstration on the activity statements functionality, an update on the check or how to check on the health of your funds, and the changes to the trust income schedule in the annual return, as well as recent changes to client view. Okay, so I'd now like to welcome Craig to provide his compliance update. So it's over to you, Craig.
Thanks very much, Peter. And very interesting, isn't it, to see that poll response there. Almost 90% will have some clients that are impacted by the Division 296 proposed legislation, which is making its way through the legal processes here in Australia. But yeah, thanks very much for having me back. I was away for last month's presentation. My wife and I were on our third once-in-a-lifetime Europe trip, and like many of us, one that was meant to happen in 2020, but that got canned. So yeah, it was really good to get away and be able to see a few things that we've seen before, but also some new spots. So if anyone needs an itinerary for a 6-week trip, hit me up after the seminar. But also come back, before we get into the compliance update, to come back to some very positive reports from our SMSF admin team, but also other SuperMate users around record numbers of funds that have been prepared, funds sent to audit, and funds lodged for their clients. So well done to all the teams that are involved and there. And then so many things have happened since I've been away. So it was very good to, over the last couple of days, run through all of the things that have happened and do a bit of a summary. So we're going to cover that off just now, and hopefully we can get then out of the way and let Reese do his stuff. So yeah, lots of things happen when you're away, and I thought that was a good way of getting up to speed with it, was actually just to go through this update with everyone. So there are some changes and developments around the tax agent obligations. There was the original proposal, then there was a disallowance motion that went through, but then that was unsuccessful. That was voted down, and now the Assistant Treasurer has been recently announcing a few things, which seems to be a bit more encouraging than the original proposal. So we'll watch this space. There was a couple of private binding rulings for those interested around notice of intent for claiming a contribution, and it's coming down pretty hard and fast. They're not negotiable. If you don't get the documents right, or you don't do it in the right time around the lodgement before your preparation and lodgement of the form before your individual tax return or commencing a pension, then that tax deduction will be denied. So moral of that story, you've got to get that right, the right documentation, and done at the right time. There was a bit which I'm really excited about, actually, about some the amnesty about the legacy pensions. So some of those lifetime complying market-linked pension, flexi pensions, a whole lot to do with reserves, announced a couple of budgets ago. And what we're trying to do by these measures is trying to, as Minister Jones says, the government's trying to help more Australians retire with dignity by taking further steps to improve the superannuation system. Because back when they were early 2000s up to 2007, I think it was, there were some great ideas there around getting rid of the tax implications when it comes to reasonable benefits limits. Once those changes went through in 2005, 6, 7, then these old style products were just really painful, and clients had to be old back then. So, down the track of 15 or 20 years, they're in their mid to late 80s, early 90s, and it's one of the most complicated areas of the superannuation and tax law. So, and there's less and less advisors, accountants that know what to do with these. So this will be really, really good news if we can get this progress happening. So watch this space. Hopefully next month's seminar we'll be able to run through some other details. Dixon Advisory, for anyone that has clients there, the compensation scheme of last resort and this inquiry that the Senate's looking into this process is going to be very interesting. It looks like it's going to be very costly if they go down that path, but again, we'll have a look at that as it develops. Just another thing that's happened since I was on leave. Treasury is also looking to deny a tax deduction for the interest charges with the ATO. They're saying it's sort of rewarding bad behaviour. But on the flip side, there's been some commentary saying, well, if people find a mistake, they're hardly going to fess up to it if they have to pay interest and then not get a tax deduction for it like they have done for years. So anyway, that's one thing that's also happened. There was a few reminders that I saw coming through about using SuperStream for contributions and rollovers. And I think that was a big surprise to me because trustees have been good, I thought, at doing this SuperStream processing with regards to those rollovers, but maybe it's more prevalent out there in the wide world. So yeah, just a reminder to make sure you're signed up to SuperStream and using that for all of those transactions. A couple more things, race through these, and then we can hand over to Reese. But a couple of things that came out of the ATO's quarterly stats, which was quite surprising to me. We've got almost $1 trillion in SMSFs, just over 30% in superannuation itself, as in SMSF. So huge numbers there. 18 billion in lost superannuation, over 100 billion in tax debts that are owing, which is both of those lost super and the amount of tax debt owing is the highest on record. Just not sure how the ATO is going to handle some of these things, but they're starting to ramp up a bit more compliance, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Also going to be over 30,000 new SMSFs established. So the strongest growth for SMSFs after a bit of a lull in the late 2019 and 20, and then growth again since. So that's promising for everyone in the sector. And then I thought this was quite strange that dental work and weight loss costs were included in some of the biggest increases in early release for compassionate grounds from super. So something there which the ATO is very interested to look at and make sure that compassionate grounds is being used very well. And only, I think it was yesterday or the day before, a Western Australian lady was caught by withdrawing or encouraging others to withdraw just over $200,000 in compassionate withdrawals, and was charging fees for people to do that. So she's got some free accommodation for 18 months, I think it is. There were a few changes to some super-related laws. We'll get into Division 296 just briefly on the next slide or two. But then payday super didn't seem like much happened in the first little bit when I was away, but then it all happened in the space of about a week. Everything was either approved and progressed or onto the next stage. So there's a bit more to come out when we get the details of some of those. Parental leave super payments is all passed and effective not next year, the year after. So that's good news for those who are affected by that. APRA released a whole lot of statistics, won't go into that, but they're really focused on fees that are charging, funds that are charging high fees. So we'll be interested to see how many people look at that and maybe use the opportunity to set up a new SMSF and move that out. Negative gearing actually came out a fair bit, but SMSF Association came through and said, actually, no, we're not the cause. We've only got a very small proportion of funds that have borrowings and residential property, so don't look at us. Auditors referred to ASIC increased in 2024, not the right direction, but was only slight. But again, they've now come out with a review program. So any auditors or accountants that work through with the auditors, they'll be interested to know some of those details. Two other things about SMSF registrations. The ATO is looking at all of the people that are registering for a new SMSF to make sure that it's not just being a short-term set up and take the money and run. So it might slow down our processes of setting up SMSF, so just be aware of that. And then also, hopefully none of our attendees today have got a letter from the ATO, but apparently 7,000 tax agents have been approached by the ATO saying we haven't actually done your own personal tax lodgements, or you owe a bit of money. So get onto that if that's partly your thing that you've got to do. Now, very quickly, SMSF industry is really interested in Division 296. Maybe by next webinar we'll have a bit more detail, but just a quick snapshot. Everything was put on hold. There was other priorities, and then 9th of October, the legislation passed unchanged from the lower house. It's now in the Senate, and the government now needs to get a majority support, and so they need to pull in the Greens, which that looks positive, and at least 3 members of the crossbench. From what I can read, the SMSF Association is doing a huge amount of work, and chatting to Peter Burgess, he's in Canberra every other week, chatting to the guys that are going to be voting on the other side, hopefully. And then there was also always talk of an early election, which would have squashed the legislation, but that doesn't seem to be the case so much now. Just a few comments, which I know some of the attendees have probably read if they're members of the SMSF Association, but the SMSF Association has been publicly saying this is really an inequitable tax. It's going to impact a few people quite a lot, and in prime producers and small and family businesses, it's not going to be a good idea. So what we need to do now is make sure that we get all of this out there, and hopefully then the government will realise that this is not going to get through. So a couple of comments there. I won't read them all out, but yeah, I think there's going to be some issues that pop up if it gets through as it is, and they don't currently have that crossbench support. So next time, Division 296, I think we'll have a little bit more to say, but there's a little bit of a compliance update for our SuperMate users. Back to you, Peter, and any questions later on, happy to chat it through. Thanks a lot.
Now hand over to Reese for his demonstration on activity statements and the rest. Over to you, Reese.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, my part of the demo is going to be discussing how SuperMate, but the majority of it is about how SuperMate can be utilised as a source of truth. Obviously, we're the source of truth for multiple items like CGT information, member details, contribution pensions. There's management source of truth with the end of year tracking workflows. You can store documents in our DMS and for lodgement records and keeping lodgements up to date. You can lodge and view data about outstanding TBAR lodgements, superstream messages, and annual return. I'll also cover off. I'll cover off in this demo some of the changes we made to the activity statement. So last webinar, I did cover off activity statements, and we've made some significant changes to how it currently works. Fund health checks to be proactive to review data on your fund. Trust income schedules, it's not so much source of truth, but we've made some changes to the logic of our trust income schedules and some updates to client view. With activity statements, the major changes we've made with activity statements is how we retrieve the activity statements from the ATO, how the automatic downloads occurs. We've introduced a ATO data refresh button and the ability to manually lodge or update the lodgement status. All right, so I'm just going to go to SuperMate just so I can show you some of the changes. This is the activity statement screen. Obviously, if you came to the webinar last month, or you've been using SuperMate to lodge your activity statements, this is a screen that you can do it. For the people who weren't at the last webinar, this is the screen where you can lodge activity statements or track the progress or view individual details on the lodgement status or how far you've progressed with it. Now, the first major change we've made is how we populate this list. The activity statement records that you can now see in this list come directly from the ATO. We now do a call to the ATO where, and it's on a fund by fund basis, where we look at the fund's last close date and we grab the activity statements that are from 1st of July of that closed year to today's date. As the example, say if Lowell Super Fund there had 24 financial year closed, we would go from 1st July 23 to now. If Tame had 24 open and 23 closed, we'd grab all the activity statements from 1st July 22 to now. And one of the benefits of doing this is, say if you take over a fund and the previous accountant hadn't lodged one of the activity statements, you'll easily become aware of it. Or say just say if you miss an activity statement that's in a closed year, you'll become aware of it. So it's very helpful in that aspect. The other change we've done to this is that, well, we always did the automatic downloading of data on a monthly basis if you have it turned on. But if you don't have it turned on, we've introduced this refresh ATO data button where on a daily basis or on an ad hoc basis, you could jump in here, select refresh ATO data. It'll go off. It'll request the data for every activity statement on a fund by fund basis, whereas previously we had a download all option, and the download only look at the date range that's on the screen and then request the activity statements for all funds for that date range. So we've made the downloading process a lot more helpful. Obviously, when the download does occur, if the activity statement is already in the screen, we use the document ID to make sure that we're not duplicating activity statement records. So say for Hillstrom, if the file comes back and says, yes, this one's still outstanding, since it's already there, it won't duplicate it. Also, the refresh ATO data will look at ones that are lodged, check to see if it's updated from lodged to process, so if the ATO's processed it yet. If you do want to check a activity statement record to download it on a fund by fund basis or an activity statement basis, so say for Hillstrom, if you think, oh no, this one actually has been lodged, instead of selecting refresh ATO data and have it processed for every single fund, you can just select refresh lodgement status and it'll review the lodgement status, update it. We've also introduced a update lodgement details where you can manually record activity statements that were lodged outside the system. So say, for example, this screen populates and you check with their external accountant and they say, oh no, I've just lodged it. You can just manually update this to lodged if you want. Okay, so that's activity statements. The next feature I want to talk about, we haven't released yet. It's the fund health checks. And the concept of fund health checks is that we we're going to utilize data audit wizards, or DAWs as I like to call them, to check on a regular basis the basically the health of each fund, and then provide a bunch of DAW warnings or errors that will identify if you need to go in and look at a fund. Now, for people who aren't aware of what a DAW test is, if you are a current SuperMate client, you'd notice that when you do an end of year close, you get a lot of DAW test results. You can also run them outside of a close, and basically for the people who aren't SuperMate clients, basically what data audit wizards are, they're a set of tests that the system does just to make sure that the compliance and processing looks correct, and it'll identify whether there's something to look at, if there's a compliance or a processing issue, or just something that looks odd. With this fund health check, it does allow you to display the results at a site and a fund level. So for the enterprise level clients, we're really building out that exception processing methodology where you'll be given a list of all the warnings and errors, and you can hone in on the ones that actually have warnings or errors rather than by going on a fund by fund basis. And we're introducing the ability to acknowledge warnings, and I'll dive more into the acknowledging of warnings a bit later. Okay, back to SuperMate. When we do release this, and we're releasing it next month, the health check screen can be accessed from here, and this is the site level health check screen. You get to notice that I don't have a fund in focus, so I can access the site level one, and this is where you can look at based on a type of profile. I can look at all the different funds that could possibly have any warnings or errors. But with this screen, it has the funds listed, it's got the status, error or warning, and how it picks up the status is if there's an error or a combination of error and warning, it's going to show error, because that's probably that's the worst outcome is you can have is the error. If there are only warnings, you'll get the warning line. You also get a list of how many failed tests there are, and this just enables you to focus on or dial on the funds that have the most failed tests, or you can focus on ones that are full of errors. For the people that aren't aware of the difference between errors and warnings, is that an error is something that we definitely know is wrong with a fund, that if you try and, in relation to closing a fund, if there's errors, you won't be able to close the fund, and it's generally major processing or compliance issues. For example, if you don't have a tax agent or an auditor connected to a fund, or a transaction doesn't contain the correct details to be able to process the end of year. Whereas a warning is more of a, hey, I think this is wrong, but I'm not 100% sure, or it's not going to stop a fund getting through audit, but it's probably something you need to be aware of. And so like a warning could be something like you have an asset with no revenue, and it's a warning to say, hey, it's a bit unusual you have an asset with no revenue, but it does happen in real life, and you can have an asset that's just held for capital gains purposes, so therefore doesn't have any income. With the site level screen, you can also dial down based on a test. So if I want to check to see which funds don't have insurers, I can quickly just look at the DAW test, look at all the different funds that have a warning, and last time the DAW test ran and what effective date was used. You can also use this to run individual DAW tests or select profiles to run on across all your funds. We also have a profile setting tab where you can modify the door profiles. Door profiles are similar to what ETFs are to shares. So a door profile is just a collection of door tests, and you can have door profiles for different reasons. You can see here, this is the end of year one. There's the fund health check one, which is used for the fund checks. You can also create ones. I've created one here for pensions, which I might want to use when in the later of the financial year, where I want to go, okay, show me all the funds that have a non-pension member over 75, or an account-based pension that hasn't reached its minimum yet, or a TRIS/compliant pension that's outside its min-max ranges. Show me pensions that are above the minimum pension requirement. So you can create door profiles for certain purposes. You can also modify existing ones. For example, with your end of year one, if there's certain door tests that isn't relevant to your firm, you can jump in here and you can remove it, so you're no longer getting that door result when you do an end of year close. Jumping back to the results section, I'll just search the fund health check and dive into my fund. So I got future, it's got one error. When I select into it, I do have a bunch of other warnings, and this fund health check screen on the fund level, it can be used just to go through and review the data failings that's occurred, and either rectify them or acknowledge them. When I say rectify, you like a valid TFN for a member, I'll jump to the member, I'd put a TFN in. Beneficiaries not existing. With each member, it seems the beneficiary doesn't add up to 100%. So it gives you a chance to go in, okay, I need to make sure that the beneficiaries do add up to 100%, or if I don't have any beneficiaries, I need to contact the client, get their beneficiary nominations and put it into the system. There are other ones, door warnings here, where, say, Jeff, he turned 65 back in 2020. It's something that's been identified as a warning because he's an accumulation member, he's over 65, could trigger a conversation to commence a pension for Jeff, since he has hit that condition of release. But say if I chatted to Jeff in the past and I know that the reason why he hasn't commenced a pension, even though he's 65, I can just tick this and select acknowledge. And then that way, that door warning will no longer appear, and I don't have to review that warning anymore. And then from a exception-based reporting, I don't have to look at this fund for those purposes of the warnings. When it comes to errors, we don't allow the acknowledging of errors because, as I said before, errors are, we don't allow fund closes if there's an error, and it does highlight that there's actually something fundamentally wrong with the fund. So in this one here, it's a chart structure issue where I have a depreciating asset without a accumulated depreciating asset. Something I'd have to fix before I move on. In this screen, once I go through the whole list, I do have the ability to tick all the tests or tick the test I want to rerun the test, and then I can view the results. And so yeah, that's fund health checks. As you can see, from an enterprise point of view, it's quite handy, exception based, and also from a source of truth, you can use it just to make sure that all the data in SuperMate is correct, and that you can rely on SuperMate being correct. Okay, the next item I wanted to chat about in this webinar was the trust income schedule updates. We have updated the logic for when a trust income schedule does get produced. The first 2 dot points on the screen, they do relate to the same bit of functionality, where we updated when the trust income schedule gets produced. Prior to the release at the start of the month, we didn't produce the trust income schedule if the fund was fully in retirement phase, or if the trust distributions were foreign income capital gains or non-taxable. And so the reason behind that was that obviously for the first one, when they're in full retirement phase, the section B of the tax return is says zeros in all the income section. For the second dot point, question 11M is 0. And when we were developing it, the ATO development documentation did point out that there will be a validation to say, hey, if you got no information in 11M, we're going to throw out a validation. So we didn't incorporate it, but in the months after we released the trust income schedules, there were a few industry experts that released articles saying that even if a fund is in fully retirement phase, you still need to provide the trust income schedule. And we had a few clients questioning it. So we did contact the ATO, and they said even though the ATO website does state that it's not required in this circumstance, they said that to produce the trust income schedule. So the first update is producing the trust income schedule even when 11M is empty. You will get this warning. The ATO does send back an electronic lodgement validation in this circumstance. It is a warning, so you can ignore that warning. But just a heads up. So if you're validating a tax return and you get this warning, you can just ignore it. The second change to the trust income schedule relates to when you do have a trust incomes, a trust that distributed non-taxable income. Say I've seen it quite a bit where due to AMIT or it's distributing tax deferred income, the actual taxable income is 0. And the ATO is sending back a validation error saying you've included this trust in the trust income schedule, but you haven't included any assessable income. We went back to the ATO and we pointed out that we're getting this validation, and they've confirmed that if a trust does not have assessable income, you do not need to include the trust in the trust income schedule. So you could possibly still have a circumstance where a fund does have multiple trusts and it's not producing a trust income schedule, and that's just because the trusts don't have any taxable income. So yeah, second change is that that validation where where it was saying this trust has no taxable income, you shouldn't see that anymore, because we're not including that trust if there's no assessable income. The last item I want to chat about is some updates to client view. Where client view comes into being a source of truth is that multiple firms do have their own client portal, and if they haven't tapped into our SuperMate API to keep their portal up to date, you can have circumstances where people are updating the client portal and then they're updating SuperMate, or they're updating SuperMate but not the client portal, and then there's a break, that there's a discrepancy in information there. So we've released this client view, and it can be used as a portal for your clients as a source of truth. But there's also other benefits for client view. So I'll just jump back into SuperMate just to go through some of the changes we've done with client view. And just a bit of a recap for the people who haven't seen the Client View webinar or aren't currently using Client View. Client View is a portal that you can provide to your clients as a way of, and when I say clients, one of the enhancements we've done recently is that originally when we released Client View, it was for trustees to log in and look at data about the fund, but in the recent months we've released the ability for advisors to be set up for the client portal, and if they're an advisor on multiple funds, they can see multiple funds within Client View. Advisor assistance we've added on to it, and Client View is just it's a really handy portal where clients can log in, they can see asset details, their bank account information that's in the system, transactions, contribution pension limits. You can use this as a query portal where you can ask questions, or they can ask questions to you. They can generate reports, look at documents, and produce forms that are in the system. And I also want to point out that we've improved it and we've designed it in a way that it's built so it's good for, it can be viewed quite well on iPhones and iPads. So the general movement in the technology wave is that people are going away from being able to just view things on a laptop. People want their information here and now, so we've made it so it looks good on a smartphone. So when they're out and about, they can view it on their smartphone. They can get notifications to their smartphone and view them. Okay, so some of the enhancements we've done is we've included a asset allocation card on the bottom right here, and the asset allocation card will compare the fund's assets to the investment strategy and then notify if any are out of range. So you can see here it's got other assets, but the investment strategy does not cater for it. Gives the opportunity for the client to either change the assets within the fund or update their investment strategy and notify or have the conversation with you as an accountant to say, okay, I've noticed my investment strategy is out of range. I need a new investment strategy. We are working on proactive alerts where if the investment strategy does get out of range, you can switch on alerts to notify clients so they know then and there, not to have to log in and view that data. Another change we've done on the fund overview is the ability to switch between members on the actual overview. So the concept of the overview was for a trustee logging in, they will be able to see information up front about their fund or their membership. And so, for example, if Jack logged in, he would have seen information relating to him. Whereas now we've improved it, so if Jack logs in and he quickly wants to pivot and see information about Kylie, he can just update it. Another change that we've done relates to the contributions and pensions screen. Originally, when we released this functionality, we showed the contribution and pension information that related to the current financial year. So, for example, 2025, you'd only be able to see 2025 information. We did get feedback that hey, if it's early in 2025, you could possibly want to look at 2024 to see how contributions were allocated, or if contributions were allocated in the 2024 year, or look at how pensions were allocated in 2024 and maybe notify the accountant that, hey, I want to move pension payments between these different members. Also, when clients started using the query functionality, there were queries being raised of, hey, like, how do you want to apply these pension payments, or how do you want to apply these contributions? And it was relating to a prior financial year. And since people couldn't navigate to the prior financial years, they would have to run reports to be able to get to look at the information relating to prior year. So we've put in prior financial years, and the logic that we use to display the financial years is the last closed financial year. So for future super fund, 2024 is closed. So you can jump back, you can look at the information for 2024, or you can look at current 2025 data. That's the major changes we've done to client view. Just jump back to PowerPoint. So as a recap, what I've shown off today were the changes to the activity statement and how we populate the information to be accurate of what is actually outstanding. We're about to release a fund health functionality where people can run doors and see the identified of funds that may have issues, so you can jump in and fix them up. We've made some changes to the trust income schedules and how the logic of when they get produced or what trusts get included. And we've made some significant changes to client view, where we're always updating client view. So it's always, and I'll keep these. I'll put updates in these webinars, but it's always good to jump into client view and have a play around to see the updates we've done. Okay, I'll throw it back to Peter. Thanks for listening.
All right. And I would also like to take this opportunity to remind you that there is a help portal available in SuperMate, and which is able to be accessed by clicking on the question mark in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and then selecting the help portal to find the answers to frequently asked questions, or even just to explore the capabilities in web. So please use that and see if you can get any benefit from it. So we've just had the demonstration from Reese of the changes to the activity statement functionality, as well as other recent changes in SuperMate. And for those that are not already using new SuperMate, I'm sure you're thinking, SuperMate looks pretty good and is really comprehensive, but I bet it costs a bomb. Well, you may be surprised to know that the basic subscription starts at $11 per fund per month plus GST. And that gives you access to the Macquarie Bank data feed, broker data feeds, registry reconciliations with Computershare, Link Market Services and Boardroom, Data Hero to read bank statements and create the bank transactions from them, property worksheets and standard letter templates, which all reduce the manual intervention and hence the time you need to provide outstanding service to your clients. Not only that, but for an additional $4.75 a month, you can get all of this as well as data feeds from over 100 other banks and financial services institutions. In addition, once you subscribe to SuperMate, you become a part of the Super Concepts family and as such have access to our SMSF education services provided by Craig Stone, who you heard from earlier. If you need any further information or would like to investigate how we can make your life and the life of your SMSF clients easier, please contact me via the details on the screen. So now it's over to you. Is there anything you'd like clarification on what we've discussed today? So don't forget to click on the Q&A in the top of your Teams view to submit your questions. I think we have a couple of questions that have come through. So I think it's probably one for you, Reese, that there's an activity, when I get an activity statement coming up at a for a quarterly that was changed as an change from, I'm assuming it's gone from changed from annual to quarterly, so it won't download, and I can't see the auto refresh button on the screen.
Yeah, I realized I just jumped the gun. That activity statement button and update hasn't been released yet, but we are aiming to release it very shortly. In the meantime, if it's if it's quarterly or annual and you need to update to be able to access the activity statement, under fund details in the configuration screen, you can switch the BAS reporting period to either quarterly or annually, whichever one applies to your fund, and then that way you'll be able to lodge it.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll be releasing activity statement. That the functionality I just displayed, we're going to release it very shortly.
All right. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Another question is, when is the health check available? Which I believe that's coming out next month.
Yeah, it should be early November.
That'll be very useful. And I think that's all that. Any other questions? We'll get back to you. And as I said at the start, we will respond directly via email as well, just to make sure you get a comprehensive answer to the questions that have been asked. So I think that's all for today. So thank you all once again for joining. Thank you, Craig, for your update. And thank you to Reece too for your update as well. It was very comprehensive. So don't forget, if you're interested or like a demonstration that is more specific to the way your business operates, please contact to get in touch and we can get back to you and help you out. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye.